All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our April 2023 meeting. Go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. And can folks see the agenda?
Yep.
Great. I'm gonna go right. I don't believe any of our beat officers were able to join tonight, so I'll go right into the president's report. Just want to remind folks we have a couple cleanups coming soon. And the first weekend in May, May 6th, with Center Square Association. This is our annual cleanup that we've been doing for a number of years. It'll be followed by picnic and food by Fresh and Pressed, as we've done in the past, and then from generous contribution from Matt Peter and Gabriela Romero, there'll be ice cream as well. So encourage all the families to bring their kids, so you can teach them about keeping the neighborhood neat and eating ice cream. Very important life skills. And then May 7th, Sunday. Now they're partnering with Council Representative Romero on another cleanup, and that one will be ending at Pint Size. So lots of opportunities as we get ready for Tulip Fest to clean up the neighborhood and really help everything help the neighborhood look its best. And then coming up later, in June, we've got our stoop stroll, which this will now be its third year. That'll be Saturday, June 24th. We'll have decorated stoops again in the market in Hudson Park that we've had the last couple of years. This year, instead of going into houses or gardens, there'll be a walking tour featuring homes that were in the Gilded Age production, with stories of the actual production and what folks who opened up their homes to the production team kind of went through. Should be very exciting. And we'll have our usual the usual fun festivities from that day. And then we have our next general meetings will be third Wednesdays in June, September, November. Also, one thing I want to put out, and I'll send a link around an email after the meeting as well. The steering committee, executive committee, and discussed in February, some other opportunities and that we want to put out, and real opportunities for volunteers for the organization, around event planning, as well as brought up by the discussion this weekend. We do want to make sure that our meetings are as inclusive as can be, particularly if we are able to at any point have a in-person space. We would want to make sure that those meetings could be hybrid, and that anyone who was not able to get to the in-person space for timing, or they're not in town or whatever, that the hybrid option would allow for full participation. And so we'd be looking for volunteers to help manage the online component as well, and all the participants. Certainly any space we're looking at. Oh, how'd I do that? Any space we'd be looking at is we'd want it to be handicap accessible, so that full range of options for all folks. That's kind of the quick update. Just as folks may remember, city did the Lark Street redevelopment project, and they've updated their website with additional information on the project and plan going forward. So I encourage folks to continue to check that out for information. And if there are any questions, no, that I will move on to, I'll hand it over to Keith and have the treasurer's report.
All right, very exciting stuff. Actually, since we last met 2 months ago, we met in February. Very little activity. We earned a little interest. We had, I think, 3 memberships come through. And then on the bottom right, you can see just some standard administrative expenses that we had. Overall, we are carrying a fairly large balance. And most of the events that we hold seem to break even in some way. We do earn some revenues, the holiday party, Stoop Stroll, and those come close to covering the expenses going out. And then overall, it seems our memberships generally cover the administrative costs that come in, and this varies from month to month. But yeah, very little activity to report.
Thanks, Keith. And I think with that, let me get, I emailed around earlier the minutes from our February meeting. I'm going to put those in chat now as well. And then hand things over to Carrie and see if there are any give folks a moment. I'll put that up on screen as well. Let's see, stop that. And let me, and I don't know how well folks can see that.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. Any questions or comments or motions to approve?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Any all in favor? Or easier, any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are accepted. Oh, let's see. And switching over. Oh,
Just to follow up on that,
sure.
From the minutes, I know we talked a little bit about the short-term rentals, what was going on with that. Gabriella, Sergio, it looks like you guys are on the call here. Any updates on what that legislation looks like? I don't know if you guys are here or not, but
I know Sergio's sponsor, but I haven't heard anything on the procedural side from the council, but Sergio would be able to speak as to modifications in language.
okay, thank you.
And thank you, Jared. That good segue. I'll turn it over to Matt first, since Gabrielle, I know you're traveling. Any legislative updates for folks?
Yeah, just a couple ones, two sort of in process. One is that the Albany County Legislative Grant Program, which is up to $3,500, is open. I've been working with the neighborhood associations and some other stakeholders, just if there's any ideas, to get that done. It's been in about 2 weeks, the application process closes. In the past, we've been able to get some money for the Hudson J Park, for the Washington Park the Washington Park for the Washington Park Conservancy. So we typically look for projects where we can just give money towards, a small amount of money to, enhance an already existing project or, initiative. Second, the Lark Street Treatment Initiative that myself and Councilwoman Romero have spearheaded is live. For those who don't know, we have a crisis social worker going up and down Lark Street 2 hours a day, twice a week at varying times. The times are anywhere between, sorry, let me just grab that quick. The times are anywhere between noon to like 8 p.m. And that was specifically the times when we heard from neighbors and businesses where individuals were seeming to be the most in need or coming out, specifically those who were may have coming out of treatment, things like that. I can say that from the basic feedback I've gotten, although there will be a full report at the end, they've already helped one person get in treatment who was not in contact with any services. They're also taking a survey of why people are in need, what people need, things like that. And it's not something that's going to help everyone. We understand that there's some people who are going to refuse help or maybe even have services already, but are, potentially acting outside the scope of those services. So there might be one or two people who might have to, might actually go through law enforcement type diversion rather than, the crisis social worker. But we're seeing really good results. There's going to be 4 or 5 more weeks of that. And then there'll be a report on the progress. We think, but the basic feedback we get from both APD and the Office of Mental Health Services is that they're reaching people who are not being traditionally reached. And they're seeing people who may need services before it gets to a crisis point. So that's, good progress on that. And at the same time, the councilwoman, myself, several others, as well as the mayor's office, is working on bringing the Accord program to Albany. Hopefully by the start of next year. The Accord program is a program I started in the Hill Towns, and that's where a crisis social worker and a crisis EMT respond to mental health crisis 911 calls or dispatch calls. And they go out instead of a police officer, or they go out as a first line rather than after the fact. And that's not only going to help, I think, get better results for individuals in crisis, but also take some of the pressure off of the police department, so they can do more things like the neighborhood patrols and things that are more law enforcement driven. The other thing that's great about that is we are being independently audited, the program and the expansion, by the SUNY Albany School of Social Work and Public Health, to make sure that the program is doing it. And we're also looking at where the other shortfalls are. Are there enough beds at the psych center? How are the hospitals treating them? Are there enough transitional housing? All of that stuff, which, we're getting a lot of, interest from the state and others to help fund it and continue it as an alternative to just strictly policing. And besides that, I would just say that I will be sending out a link once it's live to the different grant program. The county's putting out a little under $30 million in ARPA funds for different tranches of priorities. On the county website, you can find what those priorities are. The application is not out yet, but I'll make sure that goes out to the community when it does. The city did a really good job of getting that out there and helping get the community. This is another pot of money that I think is going to go towards a lot of specific issues. I know that I'm specifically working on the enhancement of mental health programs, housing, and also some blight to betterment. ARPA is the federal rescue money that was given to municipalities. Most municipalities have spent in 2 ways. The first wave of monies was to shore up finances to make up for taxes and monies withheld. The second set of money was to go to impacted communities and to further enhance impacted individuals or programs that needed to be enhanced and were found to be lacking during COVID. So I'll make sure everyone gets that, but we're excited to see that process start. That's all I have, although I'm happy to answer any questions if there are.
Matt, what are the plans for the Lark Street pilot at the end after the report, is there still plans to have a social worker at a reduced time, or will it be reevaluated once the report's been finalized, what the next steps are?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's an 8-week program, so they want to announce, what they want to figure out exactly how successful it was, and then how often, right? If they're only seeing 1 or 2 people who they can actually help and assist, or that there's sometimes no people a day, then it might be something that where they do, a randomized once or twice a month or something like that, or they try to do it once a quarter or something. Because right now they're only there for 2 times a week for 2 hours a day, so 4 hours a week. But they do switch up the days, they switch up the times. And APD is sort of like a couple blocks away just in case something happens, but is not part of the interaction. And then like Joseph's van and other services are nearby as well if someone needs direct help. So it's a large amount of resources to have just on Lark Street, but we want to actually see what the direct contact does. And then they're looking to potentially, if it works, right, a pilot program, the idea is to potentially expand it all over the city into other business improvement districts. Again, where there seems to be this sort of really big need, where there's a congregation of those in need, to assist.
Great, thanks.
No problem.
Thank you. That's terrific.
We're very excited about it. And, I just want to thank, the neighborhood associations, my colleague, Councilwoman Romero, and everyone was very helpful getting this out the door. It's been like a very big team effort, and it's something that we've been trying for a while. So, thank you as well.
Yeah, and we're all hoping this program is effective, and I think it's a great start.
Yeah, there's no silver bullet. I
No.
think it's going to be a large amount of small things that, sort of tackle this problem. So it's a start.
Gabriella?
Sure. So my updates started with the treatment pilot, and Matt, you did such a great job describing it. We've been working on that for so long, like honestly for about over a year. We started with casual conversations, but it's finally coming to fruition. So that's exciting. My code violation database legislation passed, so that is up and running right now. If anyone wants to see her history of code violations, open code violations at different properties, you're able to see that through the city codes website. I can send that link if anyone, if it's not accessible for people. And so that was passed. It's up and running, and I've gotten really good feedback from people about the accessibility of that. So that's exciting. I have 2 new bills that I just introduced in the council. One is my street beautification bill, which would address the loophole as it exists right now with absentee property owners that leave trash in a very cyclic cycle in front of their buildings. The way it works right now is that property owner leaves mound of trash in front of their building, and they have about 10 days to remedy that. Once it gets noticed by DGS, that 10-day period starts. And then after the 10 days, DGS comes back, and if it's not addressed, they are cited, and a violation is processed. And so what I see, what a lot of people see, is that maybe it's picked up on the 6th or 7th day. And then again, after that, then it keeps happening. And so it cuts that process so that there's only a single notice that would be provided. And then after that single notice is provided to the property owner, DGS is able to go in and just fix the trash mounds, just without providing notice to the property owner. So that's introduced. It's going to be discussed in committee, and I anticipate that there's going to be a really robust discussion about it as it moves through the council. Sorry, my dog is now in the room. I hope. And so that is exciting, and that's the accumulation of a lot of work. And then my other bill that I introduced is the bill requiring pedestrian actuation devices, aka beg buttons, in medium to high density areas within the city. For those that don't know, a beg button, colloquially, is a button that you have to press to cross the street. And so my bill would, and there's many positive things about these buttons. It's helpful for differently abled people. There's haptic feedback, a vibration. There's a noise, not only that orients people to where the button and the crosswalk is, but it also lets them know where they are, like what cross street they're in. So I'm not trying to eliminate the bill, but I'm trying to require automatic pedestrian signals, not requiring someone to press a button in those medium to high density areas. And again, that is introduced, and it's definitely going to have to go through committee because there's a little bit of pushback on modifying that within the city. But I'm excited for that conversation, and it's one I think that we should have. I do have that cleanup May 7th. How exciting, a weekend full of cleanups. And so the May 7th, the Sunday one, is just for the Hudson Park neighborhood. And I'm actually partnering with the Hudson Park Neighborhood Association, but also with United Tenants and the Pride Center. We're going to get t-shirts made. It's going to be really exciting. Pint size, so they'd give us $1 off drafts at the end of the event too. So it's going to be great. And like I said, it's just for the Hudson Park neighborhood. Councilmember Adams is also co-sponsoring that with me as well. So and also DGS, obviously, they're going to provide all the tools and the trash pickup. So we're going to have a really clean neighborhood after that weekend because we're going to have double the cleanups. And then two more things, and I'm trying not to take up too much time, but I'm also doing my yearly compost bin and recycling box drive. So the city through DGS and the Radix Center provide these free to city residents. But if you sign up through my link, I'll deliver the recycling bin to you and kind of provide a more annotated version of the stuff you have to do to get the free composting box. So if you're interested in that, I can also just make a little note to send that link to people to sign up. And I will, like I said, deliver that recycling bin to you at the end of April. Lastly, I have another cleanup coming up this Saturday for Earth Day, and I'm partnering with Park South Neighborhood Association, Walkable Albany, and the Boys and Girls Club. And we're meeting at 1 p.m. in Pat Kelly Park to do a community cleanup. And then there's going to be some subs and snacks after in Pat Kelly Park. I love the summer and I love the warm weather, so I'm excited to do more stuff outside. So that's it. That's all I have for now. And I'll take questions if you have it, but I'll note the links to send to everyone after as well.
Gabriella, I have a question about the bump status, specifically on Hamilton Street. In the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've had 2 major incidents of vehicular damage due to people that were drunk and speeding down the street. At least 3 of our neighbors, one has had their car totaled. 2 others have had their car significantly damaged by somebody just doing bumper cars down the street because they were so drunk. And now we have the motorcycles zooming down the street as they usually do at a high rate of speed. And pretty soon somebody's going to get hurt. I mean, this is not frivolous. This is serious. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, the city put out a request for prioritization of streets as it relates to putting speed humps on them. I just went ahead and said every single street in the 6th ward needs prioritization that was eligible for the speed humps, because I think that we have a lot of the problems that you're facing on Hamilton is really throughout the whole ward. So I already submitted that to the city. I'm waiting to hear back on when that would start. And what's required, just to be clear too, is that they would have to do a study of the traffic done on that street in order to determine if they're even eligible for the speed humps. And then once they do the study, if they're eligible for the speed humps, then they would work on implementing and kind of putting in the speed humps. I agree with you though. And I've been on a few emails as it relates to Hamilton, and I've made sure that the mayor's office and traffic engineering have received those complaints so that they could prioritize it in whatever way is applicable for their study. But I have, for the emails I've been receiving from Jeff and Terrell, I've forwarded that on to the appropriate people, in addition to already prioritizing Hamilton on that speed hump study. So
Hamilton is a thoroughfare down to get to the highway. So I mean, I agree that Lancaster, Jay, whatever, but the truth of the matter is people go whiz around Madison and come up Hamilton because that's the way they get to 787. We are a straight thoroughfare. They're blowing through the stop sign at Dove Street and somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't come to that. And I hope that they're, with my forwarding and notification of the issues that you've addressed, I'm hoping that that ups the level of intensity that it's needed. But there is, I'm just being honest that there is this process that they have to do the study before they implement the speed humps, but I'm definitely trying to bump it up as much as I can by sending over those issues that have happened on Hamilton.
To be
For sure.
honest, all it takes is for the police to set up one of those speed signs, and within a matter of days, they will recognize the problem. To be honest, that's it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a funny thing or not, as a joke, but if I can find out when the study is, I will let everyone know too, so we can be aware that that's the time that they're interested in assessing the speed, so people can be aware of that.
And that would be great, and particularly what metrics that they'll be looking at, as well as the time period. And Jeff, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, so I guess if we're kind of ballparking worst case scenario and it's not a street that is picked, what are some other, if we're thinking creatively, what are some other ways and methods to be able to highlight the issues that we're having, not specifically on Hamilton Street, but kind of throughout, because I know that other side of Madison, there are some streets there that also have some pass-through traffic that are having the same types of issues. And so I guess, like, in your experience, what would be some of the best ways for us to make that case to traffic and engineering in the city, if, for example, they didn't choose us for one of these pilot programs?
Well, I'm hoping that given the when they do the study and with the extensive feedback we've already received from constituents about the need for it there, that they can factor that into their analysis. But as it relates to like other ways to highlight issues with traffic safety, sending me an email and just kind of like letting me know when specific incidents arise would be helpful. But I'm not really aware of like a city initiative to directly address that. Doesn't mean we can't, though. Doesn't mean that we can't say that these specific streets need something more than a speed hump. I just sensed from your comment that you would want something more immediate rather than like waiting for the speed hump survey and the speed humps, in which case let's talk and meet about the specific places that you're thinking of, and maybe we can put our heads together about a project or a specific implementation that we can do to address that. I just don't I don't have a specific answer for you about like the best way to do that. It's just maybe you and I can come together and lobby the right people, whether it's city or state funding.
Yeah, I'm trying to think ahead of, the what if scenario. And I think it's not a kind of a near term, but it's more of a kind of a longer term. If and this doesn't go through, then kind of what is the next level of recourse that we could apply to be able to kind of think about, like, how do we bring the case? Hey, you didn't pick us. You've picked something in Square or Park South, whatever that may be. Then, like, what is the next step that we take to kind of highlight the safety issues that we see?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we don't get picked, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna go on that, as well as, thinking about other areas. Andrea mentions Madison has a speeding issue. That some folks know. I was, hit by a pickup truck while crossing Lark Street, turning from Madison last week. I am luckily fine, but these are not not necessarily locations that have been identified as any availability for traffic calming in the sense of a speed hump. I'm looking very forward to the additional lighting on Lark Street in the redevelopment project, but I think looking at other solutions for traffic control in and around the neighborhood and city more generally, I think would be a good thing. I'm gonna hop over to Carrie. You've been waiting patiently.
That's okay. It's kind of, I hit the raise hand button before Jeff spoke or you spoke, Terrell, but I think I wanted to know, like, I'm on Dove Street, and because of the slope of our street, I'm between Hudson and Hamilton. It's again another thoroughfare, people trying to get on the highway. Nobody stops at that stop sign. It's very rare. But because of the slope, it wasn't eligible for traffic calming, but it almost makes it worse because people are trying to speed up to get up the hill and then make that turn. And my next door neighbor's son got hit. My downstairs tenants got hit on her bike at that corner, both times people turning. So, I mean, maybe there are options to have conversations for things like that that may not be eligible for speed humps, but obviously need something, because they were talking about taking out the stoplight at the end of the next block. But if people don't stop at the stop signs, I don't know that that they're gonna stop, you know, if they switch from a stoplight to a stop sign. And I understand that the thought was if it's green, people are just going and building up even more speed when they get to that light. But my car got hit there last summer when someone went through the red light. So it's just, it seems like there's a lot of issues even beyond the fact that we're a block from Lark, and there's a lot of people leaving bars that shouldn't be driving. So I just would hope if there are conversations to maybe consider also the streets that aren't eligible for speed humps, but obviously need something.
Right.
Rahul, then Carrie.
I thank you for kicking this study off. I just wanted to say that in addition to the traffic problem, while we're doing the study, could we also do a study that measures the noise level in the neighborhood? Because some of these cars that fly down Hamilton are really loud with those excessive mufflers, and often they make those popping sounds too, which really just, I can't even sleep in the room that faces the street. I have to sleep in the back room, and these cars go flying even late at night. So would be great to do a sound study too, if that's possible. That's all I had to say.
Thanks. Carrie Ward.
Thanks. I have two things. One, just if anybody is hit, it's really important to report that and make sure a crash report gets documented, because that's how decisions are made for spending funding for safety. But also, Gabriella, for the pedestrian push button topic, what is the definition of medium and high density areas?
So the city has used medium to high density pedestrian areas in prior studies. So we would have to do a traffic study to determine what qualifies as medium to high pedestrian traffic. But the city kind of has those parameters already set, and they've used that as regulations for other studies. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I think it's in my head, it speaks for itself. Medium to high, like a higher density area, like our neighborhood would qualify for that. But I can't say those metrics, but I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Janine Law had a question. Gabrielle, I don't know if you know the answer, or I will be reaching out to APD. The shooting at Madison and South Swan last week as well, I think. Have you had any updates on that other than they're investigating?
Yeah, I haven't gotten an update other than the fact that they're still investigating it. But is there a specific update that I don't know who asked that question, but was there something specific people are looking for other than a continuing investigation?
I think just if there's been any updates to that investigation, what they found.
Okay.
And what they may be doing to prevent such things in the future. But I know that's a harder thing. But certainly any updates on their investigation would be fantastic.
Got it. I can
The only last thing I would like to add is Richard Conti, who was formerly in your position, Gabriella. Basically, this legislation for the speed bumps was passed 10 years ago, or introduced 10 years ago. I'm not sure what the right wording is, but now it's 10 years later and we're still waiting for this study. I mean, really, how long could this go on before we recognize there's a problem that needs to be dealt with?
The question, how much longer do you anticipate it happening until the humps come in?
Yeah, because Richard Conti said he introduced this legislation 10 years ago when he was in your position, and it was accepted or whatever. And he wrote today, his editorial was, his letter to the editor was published today in the Times-Union, and said good that it was, you know, finally acknowledged, but if it was admitted 10 years ago and it's 10 years later, why are we still studying it?
Yeah, I can't really speak for what happened before. I don't know why it took so long. I agree with you, and I'm kind of frustrated myself as a just like a resident that it's nothing's happened, because it doesn't seem like anything. Again, I can't speak, and maybe Richard could speak to that more, but if he passed the legislation 10 years ago, like, was it a funding issue? Was it like a manpower issue? I can't speak to that. But what was told to me was that the deadline for requests for speed humps, given the eligibility criteria, was due by the end of March. I submitted mine pretty much like the next day. I said I want all eligible streets evaluated. And then they said that they were going to look into or start the process of evaluating which streets to do for the study like end of summer. But I don't know like the date. I don't have a deadline or something like that, but I can make sure that I get that information for people to find out, at least per Jeff's point, like if we know which streets are going to be studied, do we have a timeline of whether or not they're going to be accepted into this program, so that we can think about next steps to advocate for more or different traffic calming measures. I think that would be helpful. And I should probably have those dates somewhere in a note, because they presented to us all this information at a prior council meeting, but I'll find that. And I don't know why. I'm sorry, to answer your question more directly, I can't give you an answer on why it took 10 years, but it's wrong for sure.
Well, and I appreciate that, but I do not want someone in this time lapse to be injured, especially a child.
Right.
Because of a bureaucratic delay.
Yeah, I'm pushing it as far as I can. And
I
I
appreciate that.
agree that there's an urgency. Yeah, I'm trying. Something that I just thought of that I want to mention it because it's relevant, but not necessarily because I believe in its veracity. But there is a bill right now in the coming council to reduce the city speed limit from 30 to 25 miles an hour. I mean, people are gonna speed. And that's truly what I believe. And I think that I'm obviously going to support that bill. But I want people to be aware that that's something that the state passed so that municipalities can opt in and modify it if needed. I will be supporting that legislation. The city's taking these things seriously. It's just, lowering the speed is a no-cost thing. Providing traffic calming measures to every intersection or every neighborhood would be obviously more efficient. But
And Gabriella, just real,
if I may. Sorry, this is Andrea. Who is doing the study?
who is doing what study?
The traffic calming study.
For the speed humps or for the lowering of the city speed limit?
Both.
For the lowering of the city speed limit, that was actually just discussed today in committee. And I think it actually is a miscommunication, because when I spoke with Assemblymember Fahey, they said that
Yes,
you don't
okay.
need a
Just
study for it.
who's doing it? Do we have, is it internal or do you have consultants doing it?
So as I was saying, I actually don't think you need a study for the lowering of the speed limit, and that's a miscommunication between the city and state officials. So I don't think you need a study. But for the traffic humps, I think that that's being done in-house by traffic engineering, but I can get that information for you. Does that answer your question?
Fine.
Great.
Jared, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, because I don't really know the data with this, but I'd be curious to see, are the police in Albany actually pulling people over for speeding? I know they tend to focus on a lot of other issues that are going on, but I'm just curious what the data looks like for speeding tickets that are issued within the city of Albany.
I don't have that data, and I can look into it, but I know that my colleagues in the public defender's office, I don't handle City of Albany cases, it's kind of a conflict, but
Gotcha.
the people in my office that handle City of Albany cases do say that they're still getting clients pulled over for speeding and then additional crimes that are being investigated beyond that point. So I
Okay.
can say to that extent, but I think your question has a more all-encompassing issue is like, is it really being enforced at a higher level beyond the criminal aspect that I see? I don't know, and I can ask.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Carrie?
I hate to bring it up, but do you know if they're changing the policy on what they're planning on doing with dirt bikes this year? I'm just thinking if you're going to be asking at that, if that's still going to be the same, like the danger that could come with pulling them over may outweigh actually pulling them over. Just, it was nice last week and I started to see them again. I was like, oh, shoot, that's the downside of summer. I don't know if you
Yeah,
heard
I felt the same way.
some information that we can get if that is still the same policy. Just, I think it's good for us all to know because then it's not worth trying to call anyone or do anything about it. But just know that that's like another like public safety type thing, quality of life thing.
Yeah, I hear you. I wish our beat officer was here because a lot of these questions would be answered directly
sorry.
by them. No, it's okay. And I have a great full email to the chief and to Phil about these things. I don't have that answer, but I haven't heard that they're not changing their stance. So I really haven't heard anything about dirt bikes other than observing them myself begrudgingly.
Okay, well, if you hear or if it comes up maybe in our June meeting, then hopefully our beat cop will be here. But just I know it's coming.
Yeah, it's here. I will include that in my questions for them, and I'll report back.
Great.
Unless,
Thank you.
is Sergio on the call still? He might have more answers. Sergio, jump in if there's anything that you have on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I got quite a few. I just didn't want to interrupt, but if it's okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Please.
Um, Good evening, everyone. And just to, I guess, kind of start where you left off in that conversation, I did have some more conversation with traffic and engineering within the last month regarding the speed humps. And from my conversation with Mr. Trudeau, in regards to the 7th Ward and the boundaries that was on the map that they provided me, I did a workshop to get some input on the areas. And from the questions that were asked this evening, I did include Hamilton Street as well as Elm and Jefferson Street as possible streets for speed humps to look into. The process which they explained to me is that we would send in these suggestions and recommendations. They have already created the map to let us know which streets are already eligible, and that's what they're looking into. And for streets that were not on the map colored as eligible, if council members had recommended any of those streets, they would do a traffic study on the street. From my experience so far, traffic and engineering has started to do some of those traffic studies by placing the devices along certain streets. It's usually a small black box with a black wire that runs across the street. If anyone has drove over them, that's what that is. So from my understanding, that box gets the volume of traffic that is coming down or going up and down the street, as well as the speed. How they then take the data, I'm not too sure, but that is the process of what Bill told me of what they will be doing over the next few months. The goal was to wait for the weather to get better, for them to actually put some of the devices and start taking a better look at some of the intersections and streets. What else was discussed that you brought up?
Do you know if if they're starting some in our neighborhood, Sergio? The traffic
He
study
can
stuff?
speak to that. Again, I think the priority is going to go to other neighborhoods that have not seen them yet. So we can count out the ones that have, received them. And for the 7th Ward, 6th Ward, I think maybe the 2nd Ward and a few others. It's only a few of us left that would be in that running. So He didn't guarantee anything, but again, the data will hopefully speak for itself.
But I will say that Hamilton has seen nothing.
I understand. And again, this would be a push that me and Gabriella can further take on by pointing out the fact of the instances that have happened over the last few weeks, but also that generally happens on that street. So we will do that. And in regards to
Sergio, you're
Hi,
on
I'm
mute.
so sorry to interrupt. I had my hand raised. I didn't know if anybody
in regards to some other
was looking at that.
Can you call me, Sean? Yes, I'm back. Sorry. I believe so. Sorry. In regards to some other legislative updates, in regards to this week, the council just passed updating and increasing the inclusionary housing percentages in the city of Albany. This has been a huge win for a lot of housing advocates and people in the city of Albany. Coming off of that decision vote the other night, myself and a few other council members, Councilmember Romero has also offered to step up and help by creating. I want to start a committee that will start to look at the housing situation that we have in the city of Albany. For those that don't know, we do not have a housing director or anyone in the city that is looking at housing. So we don't have a comprehensive plan as to goals or priorities that the city wants to achieve. I want to have a open meeting where I can invite community members, as well as advocates, as well as developers, as well as stakeholders here in the city of Albany to start the discussion on what those priorities are, what our goals will be, and how we will work to get to those goals. Luckily, I was able to make contact with our state assembly members as well as our senator to start bringing them in on this conversation because realistically, the housing issue that we're experiencing here in the city of Albany is beyond what the city of Albany can deal with. So we are calling on our state officials to advocate and also provide resources to help us deal with this issue. So in the next coming weeks, I will start working on establishing committees and combining committees and start having meetings in the evening times for people to come in, express their feedback and share their stories about their housing and some ideas on what we should and can be doing. Another update is back in January.
Sergio?
Yes.
Sorry, I had my hand raised for the previous topic. I don't know if anybody had seen that. Before you get too far, I appreciate your updates, but on the traffic study, I'm really, I'd like to know why Myrtle wasn't included, because I know several people had highlighted Myrtle as a problem area, and I know they don't often have a lot of representation here in the neighborhood association, but folks down there typically feel pretty forgotten with these types of initiatives. And that's another like major kind of thoroughfare where people will run through the red light and like go down the street. So I just wanted to raise that issue here.
Yes.
And thank you so much again for your.
Absolutely. And I do live on Myrtle, and I did try to ask for or recommend the street for it because a lot of people did reach out about that issue. What I was told from the traffic and engineering was that because Myrtle has, I guess, a lot of traffic and it's almost a main street for law enforcement and some of like the other city services, fire, ambulance, that the street at first would not be included, but this is one of the streets that if we suggested, they would start to look into. So I am looking to hopefully have Myrtle included in that discussion. And also back to just the speed humps. This is not going to be like the final end all be all. The goal, at least for myself and same for Gabriella, is to continue to have these discussions over the summer. And as we get more information,
because they did say that they would be looking to focus on other streets if recommended. So we do have that, but I think as a neighborhood, we just have to have discussions like this to be able to say, the community, the neighborhood definitely identifies this street as a concern, and this is one of the streets that we would like for you to prioritize and do a study on. And myself and Gabriella can follow up on that to get the updates as the study happens.
So appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely. So back to the updates. The other update is in regards to Airbnb and short-term rentals. Back in January, I started discussion of looking into some oversight in terms of the amount of Airbnbs and short-term rentals happening in the city of Albany. It was due to some concerned neighbors here in the Hudson Park neighborhood over on Elm and Irving that brought this attention to myself about the influx of Airbnbs popping up. Since that discussion back in January and February, I've opened up the line of communication to speak with other elected officials, as well as speaking to a lot of residents here in the city of Albany, both on both sides of supporting Airbnbs and against Airbnbs. I'm looking to bring this to the council and committee coming up soon. However, I wanted to continue to have the open discussions with community members about their thoughts and feedback of possible legislation. Where would they like to see this go? How flexible we are to accommodating certain types of Airbnbs, whether it's owner occupied or not. So there's still a lot of information and discussion that still needs to be had, I believe. And so I want to continue to do so. And if anyone on the call is interested in being a part of those discussions, I do have one set up for next week. I can get you the information if you reach out to me, or I can drop it in the chat. The community updates that I have, and I'll try to speed this up. On May 19th, myself and Council Member Derek Johnson will be hosting a movie night along with Lincoln Park Alliance and the Church of Christ. This is an effort to utilize our parks and get people back outside. Lincoln Park Alliance is one of the groups who is advocating for Lincoln Park and making sure that Lincoln Park remains a community asset. And so we thought movie night would be a great opportunity to start the summer off. The movie that has been chosen to be played is Jurassic Park Dominion. I believe that's the latest Jurassic Park. The event is going to be in the evening time, and we're going to have community vendors, popcorn, ice cream, events for the kids during the date or early evening until the movie starts. And so just wanted to invite you all to come out to that. It's a free event, a absolutely free event. So bring your lawn chair, bring the kids, come out. Also, there are several other community cleanups for Earth Day, along with just like a spring cleaning happening this weekend for the Delaware Avenue area. And so if anyone's interested in joining, we will actually be meeting on Sunday in front of the public library, Delaware Avenue Public Library. There's also a grant out for lead abatement. And if anyone has any issues about lead abatement, there is a grant through the city that you can apply up to $2,000 for. If you have any issues or concerns or questions about that program, feel free to reach out to me and I can get you connected to the right people. Finally, April 26th, there will be the ribbon cutting ceremony for our new neighborhood engagement service department. The neighborhood engagement service was a newly created department in the city hall. The actual office is at 200 Henry Johnson, where the office will be at. The neighborhood specialist will be assisting residents as well as council members in connecting residents to the proper departments and people to speak with. So if you have any particular issues, if you're having issues connecting to a person in a department, the people at the neighborhood engagement office will be able to assist. And their hours are from 8:30 to 4, Monday through Friday. And that concludes my updates for this evening.
I just want to say, Councilman Adams, I appreciate your input. I'm very proud of what you're doing. It's wonderful for the neighborhood and for our surrounding area. Good for you.
I agree. It's Andrea. Good job. Go for it, sir.
Thank you. Also, just to include, I am also doing a clothing drive, women's clothing drive. Since January, several women's shelters have closed down in the city of Albany, resulting in many single women and women with families being displaced. For a lot of us, we have a home to go home to, and we're lucky enough to have clothes and a washing machine. Unfortunately, these women do not. And so I had decided to do a clothing drive, and I'm currently collecting clothes, gently used items to provide to these women. So if you do have any clothes at home, if you're looking to do any spring cleaning, feel free to pack a bag or gather whatever you have. Reach out to me. I do pickups throughout the week and on weekends. You just got to let me know whenever is a good time to pick up the clothes from you. And if anyone needs my contact, again, I'll drop it right here in the chat for you to have.
You're a good man. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Adams or Romero, if there was a question in chat, you aware of any citywide special days for street cleanup?
I think a
Not-
lot of places are doing something for Earth Day, but it's not necessarily organized like citywide. I think it's like council member specific or neighborhood association specific.
Thank you. All right, with that, are there any other questions or with it being just after 8, motion to adjourn?
I do a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. With that, we're so adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in June, if not before. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you.